Hey everybody, hey everybody, it's Laurie Guest, and we are back for another session on smart communications during challenging times. And so while we give a few minutes for people to join in, I got to tell you, this is my fourth week on stay home because I was in a week sooner than I even needed to be. And I have to tell you, the cupboards have never been clearer, and binge watching on Netflix has taken on a whole new meaning. And I'm afraid by the time we get to the sixth or seventh episode, my hair will be gray and it'll be super long. In fact, my hairstylist was trying to convince me to let my bangs grow out. And when she called to let me know that we wouldn't be keeping the next appointment, we had to reschedule it. She said, now's probably a pretty good time to try and let your bangs grow out. So here we go, dealing with all of that. So my question for you, if you just want to pop in the chat that you're here, say hi, let me know you're here. The question I have for you is, what activity are you doing now that you have never done before? For me personally, now I know some of you are gonna think this is really weird, but I learned how to make homemade stir fry from my 19-year-old kid. See, I'm not much of a cook. And as a matter of fact, I've gotten a couple messages from people recently saying, wow, you look really good on your broadcast. What's going on? And I thought about it for a second and I realized I'm not really doing anything different, except not a single meal in a month has started by putting my window down first. So maybe that makes a difference. So what that means is that we're cooking healthier and being a little healthier at home. And I learned how to make stir fry, and it was delicious. Hey, Shannon, thanks for showing up. She's learning how to make homemade bread. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid if I learned how to make that, I would be scarfing that down constantly. So I'm glad you're here joining us, and others chat in when you get a chance. I'm eager to hear what you've been doing differently. I know a lot of people are joining us on a rebroadcast. So if you are not here live, but watching it afterwards, I'm glad you're here too. So we're going to dive right in. Today's topic is talking to your team during challenging times. So if you are having to manage a group of people that are falling into these difficult categories that we have, what are the right words to say? So today I'm going to give you what I think are the three general categories that we have of employees right now. And I call them the holders, the remoters, and the waiters. So we have three different categories, and we have to respond to each differently. And in each one of the categories, I'm going to break it down by giving you an example of someone I have either interviewed or encountered in the last week who falls into one of these three categories. I'm going to talk about the challenges they tell me that they're facing and ones that you and I can also assume that they're facing. I'm going to give you the action you need to take and the words you need to say. How's that sound? And here's the deal. If you hear me say something you think is perfect wording, don't worry about trying to write it down or rewinding the video to capture it. I'll make sure that all of my scripted sentences that I have in today's program are on a bullet list and available for download when we post the recording of this live session. So even as I really actually read you the script, it's going to sound a little robotic, but in real life, I would just let my natural personality come, but you get the structure of the sentences when I script it, and then you can do your own twist to it. So that's my plan. Example, challenge, action, and words. Here we go. So let's start with the first group. This group, I call them the holders because when I thought about what are they doing, these are our essential personnel, people that are going to work every day and continuing to do their job like they did before. As a matter of fact, they may even be busier than they've ever been before. And so that old term, hold down the fort, is the first thing that came to mind. And it actually is a phrase that was coined by General Sherman in the Civil War. And it started out as hold the fort, meaning while I'm gone, you keep everything going the way it's supposed to be. And eventually that phrase became hold down the fort. And it's a phrase that I've used often long before the virus came along. And that's what we're asking essential workers to do. Now, I've talked to two people in particular that fall into this role. One works at an auto mechanic place where we needed to have a car serviced and was considered essential. And the second one was a gentleman who came just this morning to do a home appliance repair in my home, also considered essential. And I asked both of these gentlemen, so what's the most challenging thing going on for you right now? And the answer falls in two categories. One, the fact that we have to go to work every day and be out there in it. Totally get that. And here's the other one I hadn't thought of. The number of customers that request non-essential services. My appliance guy said, yeah, just last week we got a person whose handle is loose on their microwave. And now I'm being called to fix it. While grateful to have the work, it bothers him that people are at home looking around going, well, I've got time on my hands now. This doesn't work. And I've been waiting to get this repaired. And they're taking their non-essential services and putting them on top of their day. So that's some of the challenges that they are facing. I also think at the same time, they're glad to have the income. They're probably nervous about the being out. And they might be a little bit envious of seeing other people who appear to have free time. Isn't it kind of funny how we always envy the one who has something we don't, while the people who are at home not making an income feel envious of those who have an essential job? It's very strange. So what are the actions that I'm asking you to take? Well, the first thing I want you to do, and this is very important, your organization needs to decide what its personal boundaries are as we enforce a work schedule. So, in other words, are you an organization that says if you work here, you got to work the shift? That would be our clinics and our hospitals and some of the other places where you don't have a choice. If you want to keep the job, you got to go to work. So that's the have tos inside there. Or are your boundaries going to be it's optional? If you would like to have hours, we need you. If you're a person who's choosing to stay home, we're going to be flexible with you and you can go ahead and stay home. We have others who want to work the shifts. Or are your boundaries going to be pure, flexible, meaning it's fine if you don't come to work? So those are the three categories inside the holders. And now I'm going to give you words for each one of those groupings. Hope you're with me. Here's the first group. And I also want you to go into this with empathy and choose your word carefully. And also another action is I want you to know your HR laws before you do any of this. I'm not an HR expert, obviously not an attorney. I'm not telling you these are the right words for your organization when it comes to the HR pieces. I'm saying that if you're allowed to say these things, here's the combination of words. And I want you to express expectations with empathy and no threats. So here's the first example for a staff person who must come to work. I'm going to use a nurse as an example. It might sound like this. Jessica, I can't tell you how much I wish we had choice in all this, but in order for us to provide the essential service of fill in the blank, we have to remain fully staffed. Hard period, stop talking. If you've been with me before, you've heard me talk about the hard period. And what I mean is say what you have to say in the fewest amount of words and then put a period on it and shutty, and then wait for the other person to respond. An essential worker knows that we have to shift these we have to staff these shifts. They know it. And so by just stating it and ending with a hard period, we've given the hard line and the hard boundary. What about the person who you have a more flexible plan? It might sound like this. Brian, we're counting on you to help staff the registers during the morning shift. However, if you'd prefer to be taken off the schedule, we do have others that need more hours. However, you're going to need to use up all your vacation and sick time before you can get time off with no pay. Is that what you'd like me to do? So now we've shown, Brian, I call this flexibility with pressure, meaning, yeah, I'm letting you be flexible, but I'm giving you that little bit of pressure that we really need you here. And there's a consequence that you have in choosing to be off the clock. So those are some words to put together for that. And then finally, what about boundaries where there is no pressure? Complete opportunity not to come to work if that happens to be an industry that you represent. It might sound like this. Hey, Stacy, we are totally agreeable to giving you time off without pay, effective immediately if you want. And then when we get the all clear, we'll call you and find out if you want to be put back in the schedule or if we need to find a replacement for you. Here are the three different tones. All of them are in the category of the have to go to work, the holders. They're holding down the fort. But we do have three different approaches in how we can communicate during a challenging time. Those of you who are with me live, if you have any comments or any questions that you want to ask me, feel free to type those into the chat and I will glance over at those in between each one of the sections. And I am glad for those of you who are able to join me live. Now let's go to the next grouping. These are what I call our remoters. Our remoters are those who have been asked to continue their jobs. They just have to do it all at home. Do you remember when working at home used to seem so novel? I've been working from home for almost 20 years. And when I first started, I had so many friends that were like, really? I love it that you get to work at home. How do you set the boundaries between home and work? And I had to establish a couple ways to do that. A slight digress here, but I'm going to stick it in right now. One of the things I did to get myself going every morning is I would open my blinds. I still do it today and yell out to the yell out to the universe, open for business, because as an entrepreneur, I want the phone to ring. I'm looking for it to ring because there's work on the other end. But not all of our remote workers today are loving the situation that they're in. I interviewed one person who works for an association, and she is full-time at home right now. And I said, other than the lack of time with your comrades, I know that has to be one of the ouch points. What else is painful right now? She gave me an answer I hadn't thought of. She's not comfortable in her workspace. She said her desk is now her kitchen table. Her place is not set up for that. She said, I miss my workspace. And I had not thought of that because my workspace is exactly the way I want it to be because it was my office long before the stay-at-home order. But not for your remote workers. Many of them may not have a system set up, boundaries at home that work for them. So what a challenge they must have. So what's another challenge that group of people have? Well, I'm making the assumption that there can be conditions at home that make it tough. We could have technology issues. What about the feeling of isolation? And then here's one my own son gave me. He is currently sequestered in his apartment in Washington, D.C. He works in government and works for a congresswoman. And he said that his biggest challenge is where he works is where he lives, and where he lives is where he works, which means he hasn't figured out how to set up boundaries. I think he's working all the time. And so I would encourage him to create boundaries with his employer, and so that there's some normal semblance to your job and the hours that you keep, because we have to keep our mental health in place too. And so let's talk about the actions you as a leader might want to take with the second group, the remoters. First of all, I'd like you to acknowledge the challenge. Jesse, I know it is tough to set up an at-home office, but what I'm asking you to do is, so you're acknowledging the challenges that they face. What about resetting the expectations? Do you actually expect the same output, the same productivity that they had when they were in the office? In many situations, I honestly feel that's unrealistic. I don't have my colleague to turn to and ask for feedback and advice. I don't have some of the tools that I need, something as simple as maybe a copy machine or access to things that we have at work that isn't as easy at home. So do I expect those same expectations? And if you don't, then that's a great conversation to articulate. And I think that it makes it a connection when you can say, let's talk about your productivity. How is it going to be different than when you're normally in the office? Have the conversation rather than just giving out the demands. And then ask for feedback and listen to concerns and show empathy and action whenever possible. So you ready for my scripts? Here we go. The first person. Abby, I am aware that production levels at home may be lower than normal. What challenges are you facing right now? Specific challenges that I may be able to help you with. I identified the challenge, gave credit to it, and then asked a question. Much better than me saying, Abby, your productivity is just way down since we sent you home. Okay, so we changed that up. Here's the next one. Jim, we are now facing a new normal, and we're just going to have to do things differently. While usually I don't check on you every day and you excel on your autonomy, I'd like to have a quick video chat with you for 15 minutes at the start of every day just to stay in touch. You know, isolation is one of the pitfalls, and I'm looking for ways to combat that and also just keep you up to date on what's going on. What thoughts do you have about this? And I think Jim is going to feel like, hey, somebody's paying attention to me, even if it's only that 15-minute video chat. And the next one, Michelle, during this time of remote working, I want you to feel secure in setting new routines for yourself. You have the autonomy to go take a walk when you need it without guilt. Be sure to mentally open and close for business every day so as not to work too much and also not work too little. Are there concerns you have about getting our plan? Are there concerns you have about getting our plan through taken care of during this time and still maintain income for the organization and for yourself? So I botched up that question at the end there, but you're getting the idea is I'm not only giving my thoughts, but I'm asking questions. So I'm going to pause for a moment, look over. Do you have to sweep everything off when it's time to eat a meal? I don't know. And so very important. My third group that I want to talk about is what I'm calling our waiters. Why? Because they may have been laid off, they're unemployed, or they may be in my situation where the demand for their product and service is gone right now or greatly decreased. They have no income or very little, and they're just waiting for that all clear. So they're waiters. And so what challenge do they have? Fear, anger, helplessness, uncertainty. They have the whole economics of everything going on. What's your action? Is to absorb, assure, and ask. So the person that I interviewed for this is trying to be hopeful. He's trying to go into this with the idea that we will get an all clear and that things will return to normal. But quite frankly, the industry that he is in has a long runway to get up and running again. And so hope is where he has to live day to day while he starts seeking out opportunities, even if they're different than what he was doing before this struggle began. So this person's your employee. What can you say to them? I want you to absorb. Remember, they're angry. This is really important. They're angry, and you're trying to make this feel better. So you're going to absorb the anger rather than retaliating back. And by the way, if you didn't see last week's broadcast, I talked about the 12 steps to dealing with the angry customer or angry person. The same rule applies. And you can check those resources out. There's some downloadable tips for you there, as well as an award-winning article. This comes into play with your waiters, because how can they not be angry? Fear and anger go together. And so we've got to figure out how we're going to absorb some of that. So here's a few sentences for you. Here's the words. Linda, I am right there with you when it comes to worry. I have no idea when we're going to be back to work, but I can tell you this. And then insert a truth. What do you know to be true about your organization? What can you promise or assure, if there is anything? And put that in there. So I don't know this, but I do know that. What's an example of this? Maybe it sounds like this. Linda, I don't know when we're going to be back after the all clear, but I do know for certain when we open the doors again, your position is secure. So that's something that I could say that I absolutely know to be the case when we open the doors again. The second half of the sentences, the good news is that we are financially stable and we will be opening the doors as soon as they tell us that we can. Is there any special questions you have for me today? So I am absorbing her anger, I'm giving assurance, and then I'm asking her what thoughts does she have. Next up, Tim. Thank you for feeling comfortable enough to be able to confide in me. Now, I want to pause for a second. Thank you might seem like a weird word when someone's yelling at you, but actually, if you are developing a place of rapport, they should feel that they can come to you. On a slight digress, I was very angry about something related to my work, maybe 8 weeks ago, something like that. And the person who was filling the role as my boss in this particular situation, I was just so mad, and I didn't know who to call. And she was the confidant that I could call. And from the very beginning, I said, I know this isn't your fault, but I have got to vent. And she just listened to me carry on like a fool. And when I was all done, she said to me, thank you for letting me be the call. Meaning to be your safety net, to be your 911. And I don't know if she meant to do it or not, but it changed the conversation that instead of being angry with her and with the organization I was serving, instead I felt like, yeah, that's what you're doing for me. You're taking the air out of this balloon that's really, really full. You're slowly letting that anger air out. That's what you're doing as managers, is giving people the place to vent some of that. So it might sound like this. Tim, thank you for feeling comfortable enough to confide in me. I know you're angry. I am too, in many of the same ways. So then, other than keeping you updated on our reopen status, how can I help you right now? That's all I'm doing, because really what the sentence says is, I don't have any other answers for you, Tim, but I can be here and listen, absorb, assure, and ask. Here's one more example. Tracy, we believe that the restaurant is going to reopen on May 15th, but in the meantime, I plan to have an online happy hour each week to bring everybody together for a short while, give you updates if I have them from corporate, and just give the time for us to be together and check in on everybody. Does that sound good to you? And we see what Tracy says. This is all that we can do for people who are waiting. I think this is really important. Now, before I go to my close for today, there's another thing that I want to say. Since I can't be with you on stage, to be with you with your teams and in person, I've really been trying to lean into this new to me virtual experience here and on social media. And actually, I've been enjoying every minute of it, because it makes me think in new and different ways. I also am a waiter right now. I'm at home waiting with zero income. And I choose to be hopeful. I choose to use my energy to continue to gear up, to make changes, to get better at my own work, and to be a resource to the people who need it. So wherever you are on social media, you can probably find me. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Connect with me at LinkedIn. Just look for Laurie Guest or Laurie Guest Speaker, and you'll find me. And I'm going to put all those links and the description of down where the description of the video is. And of course, definitely subscribe here on YouTube. I'm loving the opportunity to speak to you directly, and I'm definitely going to be doing more of it. I'd also love to see your suggestions on topics that you'd like me to talk about, with the focus being smart communication during challenging times. So let me get you ready for the close. If there's any questions or last minute comments, now is the time to put them in the thread. Here's the thing. The techniques that we need in this communication and in our overall attitude is quite simple. Patience, empathy, be open to new ways of doing things. Don't think you're going to take the old way and move it into remote or in part-time work. Put words to a guilt-free break. I would love it if Evan's boss would say to him, Evan, you have been on 24/7, it seems like. Put down the phone, put down the computer, go take a walk, get some fresh air. To me, that makes a bond come together. So let's give people guilt-free time and boundary, and also give hope where you can. You know what's ironic about all of this? These are the exact same principles that we should be using to manage people when we're not in a difficult situation. Right now, these three groups I'm identifying as the holders, the remoters, and the waiters. These are techniques that will be the same when they all go back and become employees again. The last piece, I talked to a very dear friend of mine who works in healthcare. She is an essential worker, but they've chosen to go to part-time status because of the subspecialty she's in. They can see emergencies and not be on deck 24/7. So she's more of a part-time essential. So she's kind of a mix of several of these. Part of the time she's waiting to go back. There's no remote work for her, but then sometimes she's going and holding down the fort. And I asked her, what's the biggest challenge you're seeing other than all the stuff I've already said? And her answer was quite simple. It'd be great if every once in a while somebody'd say thank you. Thank you for the sacrifice. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for being willing to come and take care of our customers and our patients when it's even a threat to you to be out. Thank you. And so in case you're listening and your boss is not telling you thank you, may I toast you at this moment for the work you are doing. And if you are a boss, when's the last time that you paused and said thank you to your employees? Because words make a difference. I believe that disruption is the perfect time to reset your service levels, and resetting service levels can start on the inside. Thanks for listening. Next week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, we're going to be back for the topic that many people are asking me for. When is the time to start selling again? I know, I promised last week that was going to be this week's topic, and you know what? The answer is now isn't the time, but it's going to be fast approaching. Are you ready? I'm going to help get you ready. See you there. Thanks for listening.